and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Could you please tell us your name, your position with the library, what branch you work at, and how long you've been with the library system?
Thank you for having me. My name is Travis Bautz, and I'm the Executive Director of the MidPointe Library. I primarily am headquartered here at the Middletown location, but I do have an office space in Westchester and obviously help out at other locations as needed. And I have been here 9.5 years. 10 years is and this summer will be my 10-year anniversary. So pretty amazed how fast the time has gone. So
it does go by fast. Could you tell us about the roles and responsibilities of the Executive Director?
Sure. So I have 7 direct reports. I have they're all the director level positions. So I have human resources, IT, facilities, public services, public relations or community engagement, and development director, and also collection services. So the traditional library materials. So all of those report to me. So it's a lot of touching base with them, making sure all of those components are working well together, and then budgetary management, project management, all those other kind of day-to-day things. But it tends to be a good variety, which is part of the fun of the job.
So what is your day-to-day like?
It varies by day. Lately, it's been a lot of construction, site visits, furniture, planning, shelving arrangements, things like that for the new branch. But other days, it tends to be just focusing on customer service. And again, I like the variety that every day is a little different. Also, a lot of community outreach mixed in with that too.
What do you find most rewarding?
I find most rewarding that public libraries in particular, serve all ages, and we say cradle to grave services. And I love that, again, every day is different, and that we can reach so many different people where they need us.
What do you find most challenging?
Again, that could depend on the day too. Right now I think worrying about things like the upcoming levy and getting that renewed, that's obviously in the forefront of my mind. But budgetary management, always want to be good tax stewards and make sure that we're spending things wisely and efficiently, and providing the best services we can for the community.
What do you think one of the biggest challenges for the library system is moving forward?
It's an age-old story. Public libraries, your cornerstone of your democracy, but a lot of people don't always know everything that we offer. So I think it's an ongoing challenge to make sure that people know that, yes, we're still here, we're still relevant, we provide a lot of variety of services that people need in this day and age. And so that's always going to be an ongoing challenge. We have a great team that's addressing that. Again, the budgetary management, the levy, ensuring that our finances are sound for the next 5 to 10 years is very important.
Yeah, makes sense. Now for a little background. Prior to becoming MidPointe's director, what other positions do you hold, other careers?
So it's kind of a funny story. My first job was in a library. So I was 15. The library, my public library growing up, was 3 blocks from my house. Was there quite a bit. Summer reading, always there. And when it was time for me to get a job, I needed extra money. My parents were saying, quit asking us for money, go get a job. It was very easy because I could walk there from, to and from home. At the time, if you told me it had been a career, I wouldn't have believed you, because I thought, I'm just going to work here till I get my driver's license and get a car, and then I'm out of here. I'm going to go work at the mall where everybody's hanging out. But I found I really liked it, and I enjoyed the work, enjoyed the people, enjoyed the organizational component of it, how everything has its place. And it turned into something that I carried forward into college, and then after college, and it turned into a career. But most recently, before taking this job, I worked at the Dayton Metro Library, Greene County Library, and then Oakwood Library. Worked my way up from different positions till I was a director of Oakwood Library, and then this opportunity opened up. And it appealed to me because it's a bigger system, more resources, more diversity, a bigger service area, and was fortunate enough to receive the job and been here for almost 10 years now. So.
Well, we've been glad to have you.
Well, thank you.
Speaking of the system, what was the MidPointe library system like when you started? And what are some of the ways the library's changed since you've been here?
So when I started, there were 3 physical locations. There was the current Middletown, current Westchester, and then there was the old Trenton location, which was a small very small storefront next to City Hall. There were already plans in the works before I started. I can't take credit for the Monroe expansion or the new Trenton Library, but first week on the job, we were opening bids for those projects. So, I was here to see them executed, but again, I can't take credit for the planning to get them started. But it's grown a lot. So we've added Monroe, we expanded the Trenton location. We also added bookmobile service, so Library on Wheels, added a Liberty Center location, and looking forward to fulfilling something, again, that was also started before I was here, an actual brick and mortar site for Liberty Township. So looking forward to seeing that this summer. But yeah, it's grown a lot since then. And it's, I think the community, though, our service area has grown in that time period, being on the I-75 corridor that's grown between Cincinnati and Dayton. It's not just we expanded to expand, we've expanded to meet the demands of our community.
In 2010, 2015, and 2020, our communities voted for levies to help fund the library. Can you tell us how the levies have impacted the library?
They've certainly been the difference maker in terms of how we were able to expand to meet those community demands that I mentioned, with that growth. It represents about a third of our funding. So very, very significant component in how we operate and how we were able to meet the demands of our communities.
As you just mentioned, during your time here, the library's footprint has grown and changed significantly. I'd like to spend some time asking more about those changes.
Okay.
First up, in 1988, the library sold its bookmobile and discontinued bookmobile services. In 2017, the library purchased a new bookmobile and services returned in 2018. Could you tell us about the decision to bring back the bookmobile and related services?
So, I've always appreciated bookmobile in terms of expanding access to library services and resources. It's always also a nostalgia factor. It's a wow factor, with kids and community events and things like that. The whole impetus behind that was we received a grant from the state library. It was a federal grant, an LSTA grant, and it was focused on expanding services to the underserved was the focus of the grant. And it was $150,000, which paid for not all of the bookmobile, but it paid for a good majority of it. So that was the springboard that got us to get that service started again. And then since then, we've added the lobby stop vehicle, which was also an LSTA grant, so that we can really meet our community where they're at. And so that was part of the fun. But there is, I can't lie, there is a nostalgia factor. There's a wow factor that comes with the bookmobile, and it's just a mobile book billboard for us. So it's a lot of fun. So.
And where is the bookmobile housed, and how did that get there?
With the bookmobile, you do need a place to store it. And we got creative initially. We had a garage at the airport. The city allowed us to park the bookmobile there overnight. It is not a diesel, which does require that you have it in a climate-controlled building. It's not a diesel engine, but it's still better for the vehicle if it's indoors. But we took our time until we shopped around and found a good option for us. We worked with the city of Middletown, their economic development department. They recommended that we talk to different places. One of them was the garage that it's in now. I mean, we even did a space study for the pie-shaped lot that we have across. I'm pointing like you can see what I'm looking at through the window, but we have a pie-shaped lot next to the Middletown location that the library owns, and we did an architectural study. What would it cost to build a garage there as well? But it turned out from an ROI perspective, it was easier to pay rent on a building, and so we went with the current location, which was a former car dealership. We have what was the body shop in the garage part. We converted part of that to an office to hold the collections, but we liked its proximity to the Middletown location. We liked that it had garage doors on either end that you could pull through, so you're not backing up a 38-foot vehicle. It has an oil drain, so we can actually wash it, and not violate any kind of EPA laws if we need to do a car wash, things like that. But that was an interesting building to go through because it hadn't been a car dealership for several decades, and a lot of remnants of mechanical and body shop work that, for example, there were chains in the concrete where I didn't quite know what was going on in this place, that there were chains concreted into the ground, but I guess it was for readjusting frames on vehicles and things too. But so it was interesting what we found. We were able to work with the landlord, who's been a great partner, and so we've been happy with that space for 7 years now. So
very cool. Could you please tell us about the decision to open the Monroe branch? You said it started before, but
it did start before. It actually started many decades ago. In the 70s, the MidPointe or Middletown Library at the time bought a lot, put a sign up in it that said, "Future home of your Middletown Library." They never built a branch there and eventually sold the lot. It turned out to be there a kind of a little bit of hard feelings, from the community on that, which I can understand. So the board, just prior to me, was trying to rectify that and find a Monroe location. They shopped around a lot of places, including the old IGA that is now the Monroe Police Department. So they did a lot of due diligence and shopping around properties for Trenton, Monroe, and for Liberty at that time. They prioritized Trenton and Monroe rather than Liberty back at that time. And so yeah, I think it kind of evolved organically. There's always been a focus on community partnerships when it comes to expanding library services. So, for example, the Middletown building is actually owned by the city of Middletown. It was built and passed by bond issue in the 80s. They still own the building. It's a rent-free space for us. Westchester, same thing. They used TIF dollars to build it. Rent-free space. Eventually later, Liberty Center turned out to be a rent-free space. But this particular location, Mount Pleasant, or now Ohio Living, there was a collaboration there that they had a residence that was opening up on Tennessee Avenue, the current building we were in, and it was offered to us as a rent-free space to offer a public library service. It is small, and we could always use more space, but it's been a great opportunity to deliver library services to the community of Monroe in a very wonderful partnership with Mount Pleasant, Ohio Living. Again, rent-free space. They've been great landlords, great partners.
Now moving on to Trenton, as you mentioned. In 2016, the Trenton branch moved to its new location. Could you please tell us about that decision to move and what brought us to the new building?
Again, the board, before I started, they prioritized buying property in Trenton. That is one of the few buildings that we actually own, and that's because they did buy that property in 2014, I think, before I started. And it was a daycare building at the time, and so they bought the building and then an adjacent lot on Edgewood so that we could have the entry off of Edgewood rather than Terrace Court, which is the side entry that if you go into the community room side, that was the entrance to the daycare when it was originally purchased. The architect renovated and added on the addition to the front, which is the entrance there. So they prioritized Trenton as a venue for expansion. I think it was more of an opportunity of the real estate at the time. I know they were shopping around for properties in Liberty. They never could find one that kind of matched the economics at the time. So I'm sure that Monroe and Trenton were prioritized based on economics at the time. But the idea was always to go back to Liberty, and it just took 10 years for it to happen. So I will say, too, when I interviewed for this job, they had purchased the Trenton building, and they started taking out things. They had Habitat for Humanity come in and take out cabinets and other things that could be repurposed. So when I saw it, it had been sort of gutted in preparation for construction, but that was part of my interview, was touring that building that day, and so that was kind of fun and exciting to see what the potential was at that time. So,
a little bit of tangent. Did you ever spend any time at the old Trenton branch?
I did. That was a trip because it was so small, but yet they used the height, the tall ceilings to their advantage. They had really tall bookshelves. And there was some Harry Potter magic going on because when they moved those materials over to the new location, they pretty much filled the shelves, even though the space was so much bigger. I don't know how they got all the materials they did in that small space, but it was cute. And I did work there some, and the story times, there was a little secret knock on the door to get in before opening. It was a fun place. The Trenton community is just so supportive of the library, and we're so appreciative of that.
You mentioned Liberty a few times now. you just talk us through how the process of opening the first branch inside of a mall, which I think is a very unique thing, and then about opening up a brand new brick and mortar.
Maybe it's just because it's on my mind, because every Tuesday, we're there on site. The Liberty Center opened, I can't remember exactly what year, 2016 maybe. When it first opened, Carrie had a contact there, Carrie Hillman, our community engagement director, and arranged for us to do story times weekly on Friday mornings outside of the children's play area, which turned out to be a regular draw. There were lots of families coming for that on the regular. They were averaging close to 100 attendees every Friday, and I can't speak for the mall, but I'm assuming that the mall saw value in that and approached us about having a permanent storefront in that location. The place that we're in now was designed to be part of the food court. It was actually subdivided into 3 storefronts, if you will, for smaller food type services. So they approached us, said, we're interested, but we don't have money for rent. And they said, no problem. And so actually, it really did work out in our favor. We were able to deliver services to the Liberty community, even though we knew in the back of our mind that this was kind of a toehold, if you will, in the community, just until we could get a bigger full-service branch built.
Do you want to talk about now the full-service branch that will be opening in summer 2025?
So again, I love the Liberty Center management. They've been great partners, very supportive of us. Their vision at the time was to not have a library branch that was enclosed in 4 glass walls with double doors. So if you're looking at that space, and you always wonder why it's so open with the Tetris effect of moving all the bookshelves in and out every morning, that was at the mall's request. They wanted the space to match the openness of that Foundry Hall. So I remember talking to the architect, and on the back of a placemat, he's drawing, the lines that turned out to be the gates that we use, and how we adopted like a Goodyear tire approach, that every morning you're pushing the tires out in the parking lot and wheeling them back at the end of the night. Same thing with the bookshelves, that they do kind of nest in behind those gates, but we left the furniture there. We knew that space met basic collection needs, but it was missing some things that, like computer access, meeting rooms, programming space, things like that. All of which the mall has been very helpful in letting us use their spaces outside of ours. But the new location will be 21,000 square feet. It'll have plenty of spaces for all ages, a quiet space over to a children's play area on opposite ends of the building, plenty of meeting room space, programming space, and then opportunities for growth. We looked at the floor plan and the planning, put plenty of electric and data all throughout the building, because you just don't know where things may move or shift over time. And so, we're pretty excited about the plan for that.
In January 2020, the Westchester branch added Innovation Point. In November 2024, the Middletown branch added its own Innovation Point hub. Can you tell us about what went into the decision to open both makerspaces?
So I have to give credit to, we have on the regular built and hosted a committee of frontline staff members. We call it a New Collection, New Services Committee. And, it was an idea that I brought forward, and it was, in my mind, it was a way to get staff engagement, get staff input on services or collections that we might be getting asked for on the front lines. And rather than have just the management team come up with those ideas, we formed this committee, and there's no managers on it whatsoever. There's no admin. It's all frontline staff. And that's been fun to watch, because there have been so many great ideas that have come out of those committees, including the Makerspace was one of the suggestions from that committee. To me, it was really exciting to be a part of that planning. It was also important to me that it not be gimmicks, that it actually be production-based, that there be something that people can come in and produce things that would be relevant to their small businesses or to their hobbies and the like, and not just a 3D printer on a shelf that, it's kind of they're cool, but let's face it, they can be just a gimmick. And, I didn't want it just to be that. Thankfully, we had a good team that had a whole bunch of ideas of things that came forward, and suggestions that manifest into what we see today.
Are there any other changes to the library system you'd like to mention?
I think that that's part of what's so much fun about this is libraries are always evolving. The passport services, the caseworker, all of those were things that came from frontline staff suggestions. So, I'm always open to hear, what's the next thing. I know for me personally, this next year we're looking at ways that we can add more hold lockers. We're talking with the Village of 7 Mile as another place to expand that. As you know, they're in our service area. They pay the property taxes, but we can't have brick and mortar sites in every corner of the service area. So I think that'll be kind of fun to install something there. We'd love to see some other options, in terms of maybe the east side of our county. Who knows what we can do? We'll see if this levy gets passed. But yeah, I think that some service expansion options where we can use technology and other vendors to help us deliver services. I would like to explore that more.
As you kind of brought up, we occasionally hear that libraries are out of date or obsolete. So I'd like to ask a few questions about your thoughts on the matter. In 2024, the Westchester branch turned 15 years old, and the Middletown branch itself is 40 plus years old. Can you talk about what's been done to keep the spaces modern and continually meeting the needs of our communities?
It's a good question. I've worked in facilities that, let's just say, were not well maintained, so that's always been in the forefront of my mind, is keeping the facilities looking nice. I mean, the community have blessed us with these wonderful facilities. I don't think they would forgive us if we just let them fall apart all around us. So we have a facilities team, does a great job on an annual basis of taking care of the day-to-day, but also the bigger picture upgrades. Both locations have had new carpet, paint, lighting upgrades, but we also look at ways to enhance services. So in Westchester, when they first opened, they had they were beautiful, huge wood shelves for display of magazines. Magazines aren't printed with the volume they were 15, 20, 30 years ago. Those shelving units have been removed in favor of glass enclosed private kind of study spaces, which are more in demand. And if you go there on the daily, you see a lot of people sitting in those kind of glass fishbowl-like cubes to do their studying or their work, if they're working remotely, things like that. So I think being aware of community demands and receptive to that and looking at ways that you can, on the regular, tweak and enhance and improve things. It doesn't have to be a full-scale demo and remodel, that you can over time and on the regular keep up with facilities to meet demands of our communities.
Our floor plan here in Middletown has changed a bunch. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. When this library was built in the 80s, the philosophy of library services was you collect as much as you can in terms of books and other physical formats, and it was a just-in-case kind of approach. You kept all these things just in case somebody came in to ask for it. Now library services, we have all of these statewide resource-sharing partnerships with the universities, with other public libraries, and the daily delivery is coordinated by the state library. We don't have to keep things just in case. There are other libraries we can pull in resource unique or esoteric kind of things that patrons may ask for from other libraries around the state and have it delivered in just a matter of days. So when I first started here, the collections, the shelves were massive. They were 8.5 feet tall, very dark bookends or book panels on the end of each range, and it was cave-like. So, we've refreshed that by cutting those shelves down to give a little more natural light, at the eye level. Patron behavior-wise, most people only look at kind of like that center, line of sight anyway. So the things that were on the very top shelves, very bottom shelves, didn't always get used anyway. So from a collection management perspective, those shelves were wasted in current practice. Back in the day, they were needed, obviously not so much anymore, but I think between the lighting upgrades, the cutting the shelves down to a different height, maybe pulling out a few shelving ranges that weren't needed anymore in favor of seating or the new makerspace, I think that's really opened up the space. And yesterday I was walking through the children's area and just love what they've done there with the new creative play area. Just a splash of color on the wall here and there. It's amazing what little tweaks can do, in terms of keeping a space fresh and inviting.
In your mind, how has the MidPointe Library stayed relevant?
I think stayed relevant because we have great staff, we have great services and amenities, our facilities are well maintained, but I also think that constantly listening to the community and being receptive to suggestions of what might be in demand, what services we can meet. I think that is also in our favor. Of course, our story times and early literacy initiatives, our services to seniors. I mean, those core service values are always going to be there, but I think we always are open to those new and kind of maybe innovative ideas too that might fill a niche in the community as well too. So I think it's that combination that keeps us valuable in the community.
Do you have a favorite memory you'd like to share?
I have a few. Obviously, bringing back the bookmobile was kind of special. That I had written the grant for that and gotten to go talk to the state library board to defend and ask for the money, and I was really proud of the fact that we were awarded that and were able to move forward with the bookmobile. The day before we were supposed to get delivery, they drove down from Canton, where it was built, and they were staying out by the town mall. I didn't know which hotel, but I was so curious to see it that I ended up driving around the town mall until like a bookmobile of that size would stand out in the parking lot, right? So that was a fun memory. Liberty Center opening, the crowds that came that day were so, it was so heartwarming to see the community turn out for that. And there's one picture in particular that I've kept over the years. It just, there's a mom looking at books, and there's a little girl next to her, just, eyes and, face and smile. It just kind of warms my heart every time. So I've kept that. Kind of an unusual one that just stands out in my mind is, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but there was a fire suppression sprinkler that broke here at Middletown. And the amount of water that came out of that sprinkler was unbelievable. It was like Niagara Falls coming from that ceiling. And I remember staff, myself included, we were all running around like our hair was on fire because there's really nothing we could do to stop it. And so, I remember staff had the trash buckets and stuff trying to collect it, but it was coming too fast. And facilities came out with a tarp and they threw it over the DVD shelves to try and, keep the water from actually just landing on the collections. And then even Wayne, our police officer, was out there trying to help too. And out of the blue comes, back then it was called Tech Services, and they had all of their bins for the new books. And they're the bigger size bins, and it was like an army just showed up, to the rescue. And the bins were very helpful in collecting things. And it was so funny because patrons were still, as the water's gushing down, they're still lifting the plastic to browse the shelves, and the water's splashing near computers, and people didn't care. They just, okay, and they just kept on working. And it just showed me a couple things, that our patrons appreciate and find our services important and essential in light of whatever circumstances happening around them. And our staff's resilient and collaborative, and always are willing to pitch in to help wherever needed. And so as much as it was a stressful day, it was also kind of afterwards you can laugh about it and say, okay, that was incredible. And we all rallied together, and that was kind of a fun memory. So,
what a wonderful story. I love it. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'm just really grateful that I'm here and love my job and love serving the community, and so appreciative to the team that I have here as well. They make my job easy. So thank you to them.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.